I'm going to talk about houses, how we choose to build and what we choose to build with. I believe that through local action, we can have significant global impact on how houses are built for humanitarian purposes. It turns out that Moka comes from the word Moka Mondawo in my native Cameroon dialect. And Moka represents the joists, the ceiling joists and rafters that support the roof of the house. So at least the first lesson is that Moka has nothing to do with coffee, chocolate, or Moka chocolate. So I'm going to talk about houses. From a public health perspective, a house fosters health. One of my early career mentors, Hans Rosling, defines the house as a fundamental element of health, health being the state of physical, social, and mental well-being. What happens in the bedroom determines the number of people you got to feed. What happens in the kitchen determines how well they are fed, and what happens in the bathroom determines how clean they would be. What happens in the living room determines the sense of self, and what happens in the neighborhood, the grouping of houses, you feel me, determines the learned behaviors that allow for survival. Hence, health, or the home, is a critical element in fostering social well-being. And if that's the question, how well are we doing? Especially in situations of disaster. Obviously, living in an industrialized world, the appeal would be to construct houses with steel and concrete. Yes, I like the skylines. You build the skyscrapers and make and adorn our skylines. That's awesome. The sad truth is that as houses and skylines have been developed, housing has become less affordable, more people are homeless, and less are safe. And also, when you build with concrete and steel, it turns out that if the earthquake happens, then you have a lot of disaster. It kills many people. Earthquakes are fatal. Over the last 100 years, 1,311 fatal earthquakes have occurred. 3 million people have been killed. 30 million people have been rendered homeless. And you'd say, well, earthquakes are maybe not that frequent. This is the number of earthquakes that have occurred in the last 30 days. The majority of the earthquakes are happening around the world in coastal regions that harbor the most populated cities in the world. And you'd hope that we have a solution to that issue. The material cost, the relief expenses, the cleanup costs, the construction costs run in the billions. And we still don't have a global strategy for reconstructing in times of disaster. And you'd hope that we've learned from history. Let's take a case of, let's look at Haiti for a minute. Over the last 300 years, there have been 5 fatal earthquakes. And each earthquake, the message is rebuild the cities with box-shaped houses and concrete and steel. It turns out that in 2010, in January, there was an earthquake, and 230,000 people were killed. 180,000 homes destroyed, 2 million people rendered homeless. And if you listen to the news, the message is, let's rebuild Haiti, Port-au-Prince, with more concrete and steel. More, more, more. That seems to be the norm. What are the experts saying about it?
And the dean of the engineering school says the tower was not built to California's tough building codes on purpose. And that's why it's still standing.
In earthquakes, stronger is not always better. And so this particular test we're doing here will actually show that our current building code provisions are not necessarily safe.
More concrete and more steel is not the solution. Also, besides material, the shape of the houses is not ideal. An idea worth sharing is that concrete and steel are unsafe and unfit for the job. I believe it's time for us to think about the problem slightly differently. And you'd ask me, do we have an affordable solution? The answer is yes. We could turn to earthen architecture, we'd find multiple solutions.
We have destroyed our environment by producing tons of CO2. We've heated up our earth and created a subhuman living condition. But don't we have an alternative? The nature in its raw state, has gifted us with plants that can actually rival steel. Bamboo is the fastest growing plant on earth. It's as strong as mild steel and in density as light as bird's sperm. It's a very versatile material. You can eat it, weave it, or construct a large-scale structure with it. Earth and bamboo can do anything that steel and concrete can do.
We know that we have natural materials, but besides materials, shape is important. This is a model of a dome shape. From time immemorial, we know that dome-shaped structures are way more earthquake resistant than box-shaped houses, as you can see in the model. And you'd ask me, do we have an affordable example? And the answer is yes, the Eco-Dome. The Eco-Dome was developed in California by an architect, Nader Khalili, and it is an affordable, practical, and sustainable solution to earthquakes. And here's how it's built.
Designed to use minimum material to create maximum space. This is the way nature builds its flower petals, soap bubbles, and seashells, or the way a new technology builds its aeroplanes and spaceships.
As simple as that. You trace the earth, you fill bags, use barbed wire, and you have a house. All you need to do is design the house to meet the health needs of the family, get local labor, use local material, barbed wire and bags, and you got a home. It turns out this house you're seeing is one of the most earthquake-resistant structures tested in California. It is pleasant. And so you see the issue here is not the fact that we don't have the right technology. It's our unwillingness to think outside the box. And I'm talking about the concrete and steel box. And the question is, at what cost? This chart here compares contemporary architecture with earthen architecture. And if you think about it, the house goes through three phases: construction, maintenance, and demolition. For earthquake construction, all you need to do is use the earth beneath your feet, get local labor, and in the case of the Eco-Dome, barbed wire and bags. Maintenance is replastering, heating and cooling costs minimal because of the thermal mass. Demolition, the walls return back to where the earth came from. With modern architecture, the problem is you need experts. You need architects, structural engineers, masons, painters, roofers, and you also need to import material from faraway places. Cement, steel, wood, nails. It makes, the only way we can afford it is through 30-year mortgages. What's even unbeknown to many people is that the maintenance costs outweigh the construction costs. Remodeling the house, changing the roof every 30 years, changing the heating system, the cooling system, that adds significantly to the cost. And we know that we need home equity lines of credit to sustain our houses. The next thing is that the demolition costs are even worse. The toxic materials and the solid waste have now to be relocated to other sites. That's what it costs us to build houses. And you think about Midtown Plaza, built in 1962, 2010, if you had to write the obituary, a house built dead at age 48. Our grandchildren may not live to see the houses we're living in right now. So the way we are building may not be efficient, especially in situations of disaster and for humanitarian purposes. I met Manute Bold in 2008. He was visiting Rochester, and he wanted to build schools in Sudan. He had $150,000 as the goal to raise money. I said, Manute, you cannot use $150,000 to build only 3 classrooms in Sudan. He got it in 15 minutes. He decided to change his plan, and he bought the machine, the hand press machine, for $6,000 and built 3 times more classrooms with the cash in hand. He didn't have to raise any more money. I believe that local action in Rochester can drive global change. One of the examples is that right here in Rochester, we're fortunate to have Sister Marsha, who is also trained in California by Nader Khalili. And we worked together and got the city of Rochester to approve the construction of an eco-dome. Rochester is the second city in the nation to allow construction with earth bags, barbed wire, and earth. So the vision is to train as many volunteers in Rochester on this technique, who can now pretty much load their bags with a bag and barbed wire and build houses around the world and transform areas affected by disasters. The idea here is that if we're talking about sustainability, the operative word is affordable and practical. And for that to happen, the only solutions are local labor, local material to meet local needs. I invite you to join the Haiti 10-Year Commission. We're looking for volunteers to help us learn this technique and go to any part of the world to build schools, hospitals, but in Haiti to build 1,000 houses. The only way this can happen is not because of lack of technology or material. It's if we're willing to shift or have a seismic shift in our thinking. Thank you.